Hey, it's Kevin. Welcome back to the Venture Outfitter. Today we have a really interesting program with Jonathan Kleinman. He is one of our, I couldn't remember which Venture Forth cohort he'd gone through, Venture Forth 31. And so what's exciting about what's happening is, this whole thesis about building great businesses that are changing the world for the better. And in Jonathan's case, we had lunch just right before COVID times, that where he told me, hey, guess what? I'm not $1 million run rate of revenue. And, a lot of people get excited about $1 million worth of funding, but that's nothing to get excited about. It's real exciting to get to the $1 million worth of revenue. And so I was real excited to hear about that. And I said, hey, I would like you to come present to the Venture Outfitter. And I mentioned just a couple of things that I want to mention at the front end, just in case someone sees the video and then wants to know about this some more. We are now making this part of the program available to the world for free. And it used to be that we charge $97 a month for everything. There still are some, pay type of things, but part of what TechCrunch is going to be doing and to just help entrepreneurs reboot the economy, both here and other places, is to make this program free. So we can hear from experts, we can hear from, scar tissue donors, not like Jonathan, to tell us, okay, what does it take to actually make things happen and stuff like that. Now, the thing that's really exciting about Jonathan's company is he's not only building great business, but he also is saving water and has an interesting model. We'll have a couple of things we'll talk about on the coming programs. I just mentioned real quick. Next Thursday, we're going to do another one of our Russia series about building bridges between here and Russia, funded by the Eurasia Foundation. The whole thing about that is we're going to be talking about intellectual property from Bill Halsey, the guy who he trademarked TechCrunch for us. And so we've worked with him in the past. We're going to hear, he's also done a lot of work between here and Russia in the past as well. So intellectual property would be the main thing. Legal landscape and more generally, but with a specialty on IP. And we're gonna do a campfire. So make sure that if you're available, 6:30 on Texas time next week on Thursday, we'll be working with a couple of different other sponsors or co-hosts, including Startout. And we'll be, it should be a really great campfire. I hope that we have people from around the world. I'm certain that we'll have people from around the United States. It's going to be interesting because, like I said, I think it's going to be the first massively big digital campfire that we've ever done. So it'll be an experiment. Kristen mentioned earlier, and if you're just coming on now, if any of you can actually, after Jonathan finishes, we want to test out the software, and we'd like to work with you guys just really quick. Okay, so hopping right in, Jonathan. It's cool to see you kicking ass, taking names, because I've seen you suffer in the past, in the Venture Forth program and through some of the other things that happened when you were at our co-working location, and just like everything else that it takes to build a business. Congratulations, first off, for the getting to the $1 million with the run rate. But let me just hand it over to you. And I know you've put together a little presentation to talk about things. Tell us all about it. And while he's doing that, if you have questions, throw them into the chat. We'll process them at the end of this.
Okay, cool. Let's see. So can everybody hear me okay, first of all?
Yep.
All right. And can everyone see the screen? Okay. So just want to get a general sense of where people are right now in your efforts so that I can kind of gauge the audience. So how many people are in the process right now of cooking up a venture but have not launched yet? How many people here? All right. How many people have just barely launched and are trying to get customers? Okay. And then how many people have been around for a while, getting into the scale-up mode, looking to grow their businesses? All right. So I've got representation across the board. So my name is Jonathan Kleinman. I'm the CEO of Aiqueous. I'll tell you a little bit about the company. To begin with, we're headquartered in Austin. I personally believe that I'm going to show you like a snapshot of revenue growth for the company. And that's like, but the story behind that is what is the unique and distinct thumbprint, I think, for any company that's going through this particular process. If you talk to investors, investors will tell you, or the VC blogs will tell you that there's like one of three stories that you have to have. Every venture is its own story. And so part of the challenge, I think, comes in believing that you need to shoehorn it into what somebody else's expectations are. We certainly haven't done that. I think that a big part of my challenge has been that we haven't lived the kind of story that we were told that we needed to. And it's taken me this long to get to the point where I don't care anymore, and we're just moving forward on where we have to go. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's our path. This is our path in terms of cash in. And so we started in February 2015. And you can see that on an accrued revenue basis, we exceeded $1 million last year. And that trend is going to continue. Even with COVID, we're projecting somewhere between a 25 to 50% growth rate in sales this year, and hopefully in revenue as well. So, and it could be bigger. There's a number of competitive bids that are coming out, and that should make things interesting. Now, to put us in context with what you all are doing, this is why we exist. It took perhaps 3 years to really articulate that, and over the past 2, that has remained consistent. So our vision is to become the platform of choice for utilities of the future, and that has a whole bunch of implications about it. We'll talk in a moment. Why we are seeking to amplify the positive effects that those clients have in their communities, predominantly environmental, but social as well. And so that's the reason that the company exists. And this is what we are seeking to accomplish in the course of our work. All right, so this is from our most recent investor deck, just to give you an idea of what's going on. So the utility space is having a very hard time right now, globally, in the United States specifically. Total consumption of product is going down, fixed costs remain constant, rates have to go up. And utilities are struggling to create new business models that are going to work in terms of engaging with their customers. So what are we doing? We have built an app, which is our intellectual property in the Salesforce App Exchange or the Salesforce ecosystem. So we are riding on top of the Salesforce intellectual property with our own product, and we are helping electric utilities deploy certain types of programs and services that are going to help them increase revenue and also kind of keep that customer relationship. We're doing the same on the water side, and you've noticed that Kevin introduced us as a water company. That was pivot number 1. We'll talk about pivot number 1 and pivot number 2 as we go through this entire conversation. But you can see on the right-hand side that there's a lot going on in the utility space where utilities are trying to figure out what they're going to do, and the intent is for us to create the platform that's going to make that happen. So what have we done? We've created a single app which can be branded in 2 different ways depending upon the market. We're an official Salesforce App Exchange partner, and we've taken decades of experience offering programs and services to customers and baked it into this product. Our initial applications, PowerPath and Waterways, focus on the programs, and the roadmap shows us expanding to include things like the customer portal, data integration tools, a number of other things that we are getting involved in. So any questions about just Aiqueous as a venture, what we're looking to do, the space that we're operating in? All right. So now this is fun. Let's take a look at the pro forma that I built in Venture 431. You can see that I was going to be over $10 million in revenue last year. So it's always fun to look back at the pro forma that you create and the expectations that you're setting yourself as you try to attract revenue. The fact that I am only here as opposed to here is both an indication of the sector that we are in, the pivots that I've had to make in the course of running the business, and also the feedback that we're getting right now from the venture capital market specifically about what's important, what's interesting or unique about the business. We'll talk about all of that. But I did go back to my, Kevin, you remember the 36-month cash flow model, and I expanded it out to 60 for the sake of the angel investors. So this is, this is how we compare. So stories are always going to be different than the expectations that you have for yourself right when you get set up. Okay, so where did we start? We started in the water space in 2015 because the US was in the middle of a major drought. The intent of the company was to be a data-driven water insights and solutions. The founding partners, myself, Dan Merchant, came from a large consulting firm, not a software firm, but a consulting firm that did work in the energy efficiency space. And we wanted to take that experience, translate it to the water conservation sector, and build software. We did not have a tech founder, which had significant implications, and I think is one of the reasons that our startup has taken as long as it has. So what were we looking to do? We were trying to address the problem with current conservation programs at the time. What were we going after? 40 out of 50 states expected water shortages, and water conservation is the least expensive to meet that need. And the market size was substantial. It was, it's 110 billion a year. Water conservation is a small part of that, but I always knew that I wanted the product to be broader than that. And so this was the addressable market that we were talking about. And then we were looking at two different ways of going to market. Everybody was telling us about market channels. You got to have market channels. And so we were talking to environmental engineering firms and other folks that were working with our utilities. And then we had, at the time that I was in Venture Forth, we had one beta customer, and we were doing consulting work in order to help us continue to pay the bills. So that, that was the story that we were presenting to angels right when we got started. So what happened? This is a picture of Austin. These were the Memorial Day rains that took place literally 3 months after I founded the company. Drought just ceased being a critical issue in Texas and California. And to use the pun, the drive for water conservation evaporated. And so, we were trying to figure out how to make a water conservation software platform relevant. And we got some, core customers. We landed San Antonio Water System, which is the largest water utility in the country and the largest water conservation portfolio, I think, in the country, delivered by a single utility. But what we ran into were a number of barriers that we didn't vet at the time that we got things started up. So water utilities were not comfortable moving into cloud computing. We believed that the drive and pressure for water resources is what would make this market move up and give us the opportunity to scale. Starts raining, that completely changes. And so all the internal barriers to procurement, budget, the lack of regulatory drivers, all those things come to play. And so I was going to state conferences and I was trying to train people on what cloud computing was at the time. And so when we were trying to make this happen, we also fell into a revenue source on a consulting gig that was able to, continue to fund the company. And so that helped us with ongoing operations, but it didn't necessarily help us focus our development work. And the funds that we got from the angels to get us started, we got $335,000 in convertible notes. We didn't really have a strong technology partner to build the product. So pivot number one. So the first pivot that we made, given the challenges that we were finding in the water space, was for me to return to the energy efficiency market that I'd come from. So I worked for a company called Clear Result. I was an executive there. The company had grown from 36 people to 3,000. I was there for that time. My non-compete expired in 2017. So I approached a former Clear Result executive and said, hey, we have this platform. It could completely work in the energy efficiency space as you're getting started. And she needed a platform to be able to get her business going. So we became her software, and then she won work in Illinois. So Commonwealth Edison, Nicor Gas, and Peoples Gas North Shore. That gave us about $100,000 in onboarding or configuration revenue and $100,000 a year in annual licensing. That was our first really big contract. Then in 2018, we also won a bid with Marin Clean Energy, which is in California. It's another energy provider. And then we entered in contract negotiations with Seattle City Light. And that market, is, only $8.4 billion. But it was still a good place for us to go back to in order to really try to drive the development of the product. So this was the first pivot that we that we implemented. The other thing that we did at the time was we created the app on the App Exchange. Prior to that, we were just configuring Salesforce environments. And what we did was work to create an actual managed product on the Salesforce environment. It has its challenges and its problems. And we didn't have the internal technical resources to do it, but we muscled through. It was also very difficult for us to hire or to find a company that would be able to provide us the consulting work that we needed to build the product and maintain it. We went through a couple of folks locally. We went through a couple of folks in companies broadly, and things just didn't work out in that environment for a bunch of different reasons, which we can get into later. But we did create the product, and that became kind of our anchor point in the Salesforce ecosystem. So what happened? The sudden growth in software work and the absence of people who actually had a software background, not surprisingly, put a lot of strain on the company. So we needed to reroute and retrain staff in the software work, especially none of whom had prior Salesforce experience. The great thing about Salesforce is anybody can pick it up. The bad thing about Salesforce is that anybody can pick it up. And so you end up, with a lot of different ways that you can potentially go. But the team threw themselves into the challenge, and everybody was wearing multiple hats. So on every project, the same person was the project manager, the solution architect, the business architect, the data analyst. We didn't have very well established systems and processes. And we ended up expanding to one additional client, but we lost a lot of bids, a lot of subsequent competitive bids due to team size. We're not formally a Salesforce implementer. When we got the work with Seattle City Light, that took up the bulk of the company resources. And in utility space, when you respond to a request for proposals, which is part of the procurement process, the people that you put on the proposal are the people who need to do the work. And so they were asking us, you mean to tell me that the people that you are using right now in Seattle are also going to be available to help us? And we said, yes. They didn't believe us. And so they went with other vendors. So pivot number 2. So it wasn't just enough to pick another market to get to. We actually needed technical chops. We needed software discipline to be able to do the work. And we are just coming out of the second pivot right now. So on the left, you can see the login to a customer portal, which we're building a mock-up for a demo next week. And we have a development company, project development organization that's helping us there. And on the right-hand side, you will see a Jira dashboard that our new senior project manager has put together to organize all of our tickets, all of the work that needs to be done. The decision was made to finally, start working on real software discipline and real technical capabilities. So what has happened? Founding members have left. So my co-founder, who was initially our vice president of operations, he became our vice president of business development. He moved to Colorado to be closer to family. He and his wife had a baby, and it was time, I think, at that point for things to transition. Our senior product manager, who was mostly doing implementation work as a solution architect, also left because he was not a software person by trade, and it wasn't what he was really looking to do, and he wanted some time off to figure out what was going on. Those have been replaced by staff with tech background. So we now have a chief technology officer, a part-time CTO who has 20 years of software experience and also specialized in managing offshore resources for software development. And we just hired a senior project manager who has come in and is getting us organized and is helping people to better understand what the different roles and responsibilities are. We added an offshore development firm, which does specialize in Salesforce, but has a lot of other technical capabilities. They are the ones building out the customer portal. They are building a data integration tool. There are things that we know that we need to do in order to build the product further out. And even in the midst of everything that's happening related to COVID, our work is expanding. Our existing clients are asking for more. We're getting more licenses. We're getting additional configurations that we're being asked to build. And there are 6 to 8 major procurements going on this year that we've been positioning ourselves for. And based on all the lessons learned, we are working with this offshore development firm and also a source of talent called Meravis, the Meravis Foundation, that basically transitions veterans into the Salesforce ecosystem. We're trying to work with them to be able to create a pipeline of candidates that we can rely upon. The implementations are going faster and smoother, where we have fewer cost overruns. Product capabilities are expanding, and we now have a true roadmap established and formalized. So what are our prospects now? We're now stable, cash flow positive, and we are now at the point, I think, where we are ready to scale. So we had to go through all of this just to get to a point where we really, I think, knew what we were doing, figured out what the focus was, the product was, the roadmap and the vision. Now we're ready to scale. Venture capitalists are telling us that we're not a good candidate for VC. And I've spent 5 years trying to raise funds from VCs. And now there was one in the energy space called Intellis, based out of Dallas. Jonathan Crowder gave us really good feedback on why in this particular sector, it doesn't look like we're a great candidate for VC funding specifically. That is that even if you get a huge cash infusion, it's not that there's a limited number of utilities and that the sales process is slow, it's that it's really relationship driven. And so even if you get a bunch of cash, that doesn't speed up the process of developing the trust with the utility client themselves. And so, if VC funding is coming in, it's because, there's a significant opportunity to scale greatly that can be really funded by cash. And there's a land grab that has to happen where you really got to get out ahead of everybody else, or you need to expand quickly to keep somebody else from getting there. And based upon their understanding of the market and looking at what we're doing, even if one of our competitors got a huge infusion of cash, that wouldn't speed up their process. And the same would be true with us. So as a result of that, the short-term strategy is for us to self-fund product development and sales. And there's a lot of ramifications for that we now have to discuss. We have convertible notes that we've extended for 1.5 years that are going to mature, and we're going to have to buy people out who are going to want to leave. So we're not necessarily the running negative cash flow looking for the VC to come in and hopefully flip us to somebody else model. We may be looking at something more like a private equity or a strategic buyer. And that means the business has to be run differently. And I've got a meeting with the board tomorrow to talk about that. So on the one hand, it's great. We've created a business that has a clear market need. We have satisfied clients. We have zero churn. People are happy with us. People are very interested in us. At the same time, what I set out to do is not what ended up happening. And for the people who've been at this for a while, I see some nodding heads. That's the way that things go. So, I'm not looking to turn this over and then try to find a venture capital backable company. I think that, there's really some cool stuff that we can keep doing. The vision and the mission that I showed you at the beginning is still the driving force for the company. It's just, it's taken a long time. One of the speakers from Ventureforth who came in one time said that, this process is like, hiking a trail up a mountain. And if you're doing a whole bunch of switchbacks, you can't really tell that you're making progress until every now and then you get to a clearing and you can look out and see how far you've actually come in that process. One of the reasons I was excited about Kevin's invitation is because this is one of those opportunities for me to come to one of those clearings and just kind of look and see the history, where we were, what we intended to do, how different it is, and yet how far we've come. So that's a background about us. What I'm really interested in is hearing about what's going on with you. All I can offer is, my personal experience, and just respond to, things that we've done. We've been using Scaling Up by Vern Harrish. Have tried to stick with that for a while. There's a couple of other things that have mattered, but mostly I've relied on my board. I've relied on my network, advisors, and I'm not one of those people who read business books and then retool the companies according to what I just learned. So that's what I got. So I'm happy to go ahead and take questions from people, and see what is of interest or of value to all of you.
Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing it. And yeah, you should know that kind of following, just so everyone sees, because I'd like everyone to get this sense that part of our whole model is exactly what Jonathan just talked about this whole idea about, so I studied martial arts, right? 30 years of Japanese martial arts, 24 years of Aikido. And the idea is that you're never quite there, right? Jonathan's talking about doing all these switchbacks back and forth. But then part of the way that we should be working with each other is exactly what he's doing right now, sharing his story so that we can learn from him. It's like there's this notion called the senpai kohai. It doesn't mean that senpai is the person who's been studying a little bit longer than the kohai, the person that's actually behind, behind them on the trail. And this is exactly it. It's like Jonathan's got some scar tissue to donate to us. It's just like, was that Kevin Reddy that actually said that expression? Or who was it?
I don't remember who it was. It was, that was 2016. It's been a while. All of those brain cells are gone. Like all the, except for a few things that I remember standing out with the adventure forth. Like I've had to use, all that memory has had to get rewritten for other things. So
yeah, no, totally. The same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I tell you what. Let's have some questions back and forth. So I got to ask all sorts of questions myself. Does anyone want to just?
Yeah, I do.
Question we could. Yeah, go ahead.
This is Lindsay here. Jonathan, congratulations and well done. I just wanted to, in a sense, make a couple of comments. One was the fact that you've described the startup founder's journey. I spent all my life in corporate America, and I can tell you it's not much different because, for example, my company would also do exactly what you did. You'd model the future, and you have to chart the progress with the people who'd funded you. We didn't have venture capitalists. We had the company that did that. And it's amazing. We also have to do lots of pivoting as well. So I think it's one of those seminal moments. You have to be brave to say, we were wrong about those things, we're right about those things. We've validated our assumptions, and we make these choices going forth. And it's a continuous process that you have to go through. And I think the insight I got from working with entrepreneurs is that the people who are flexible enough to learn and be able to make those are the ones more likely to succeed, as opposed to the ones who are unbending and say, no, my vision is this. So you did it. Congratulations.
Well, just to respond to that very quickly, what's funny is that everybody kept telling me that I needed to let go of the water stuff altogether. And I refused to do it because A, I was emotionally invested and attached to it, but B, this is completely cyclical. And actually what we're finding right now is that most of the interest in our product is coming from water utilities impacted by COVID that now need a virtual solution. And so had we abandoned it, there wouldn't have been the opportunity to take advantage of it right now, and so trying to figure out how to keep your toe in the pool and still be available for the rebound is tough. And I had a lot of people, everybody else more or less, telling me I should dump it, and I just wasn't willing to. So anyway, Lindsay, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, but that's great, because I think this is where, you are the CEO, you are the entrepreneur, and other people always tell you that they kind of know better. And that's the kind of arrogance, I think, that they have, that you have to kind of deal with head on. And I've seen that too, by the way, even in the company I used to work with. People of director and VP level always seem to know better than me. And I'd spent all the time with the customers learning the business. How did that work out? My other question is very simple. So you were courting venture capitalists. We read a lot of bad things about venture capitalists. I mean, they're really corporations looking to make money, and they want certain bets. Why would you go there and maybe not try going back to angel investors?
So there's a couple of reasons. One is that the check size that we were looking for exceeded angel investors.
Okay.
The second part is that angel investors are a more labor-intensive process than VCs, so we do have a local network called the Southwest Angel Network for Social Impact, who invested in us. Juan Thurman is a board member of ours. There are, whatever term you want to use, tire kickers. I mean, a lot of people who like to pretend that they're investors and ask a lot of great questions and enjoy the prospect of showing up. But when it comes time to actually write the check, like all of a sudden they have a big mental hurdle that they have to get over. And if you think about the people that who pretend to know better than you, I hate to say it, but angel investors, after they've gone to a couple of sessions, really fall into that category. And so in some cases, it's been refreshing to go to VC firms and have them say, you're not ready. Or here's what, the best one has been, here's why I think this is not the right tool for you. So that is ultimately why.
Very good.
What do you think about, so you chose something that we were talking previously, and one of the reasons I kind of latched on to your venture is you're in the impact space. And,
right.
Which is all about impact innovation. But
Yep.
How did you receive that? How did it affect the conversation? How's it affected your business all the way around? How's it affected you?
So that's a great question. So the first thing is that I think that had I not been in the impact space, I might not have had maybe the sense of entitlement that I felt that I did have, which was, look, I'm trying to save the world. Like, what is it that, why don't you want to do this?
Yeah, that by the way is me every day of the week.
Yeah. And so it would frustrate me when people who are looking to invest in the impact space were using the exact same criteria on you as every other investment that they were taking a look at, right? And I had a number of investors say, you're really interesting, but we don't have steady monthly recurring revenue growth. Like ours is very lumpy because of the sales process. So our first quarter looks, pretty good. Second quarter's okay. Third quarter's terrible. Fourth quarter is phenomenal. And that's just because of the way that it works. And it's a constant pattern. But I can't go and show like a 15 or 20% MMR growth. And there was one shop locally that said, look, if you can't show us that, we just can't consider you. Like our business process cannot accommodate looking at another model. And so, so because when you're in the impact space, you're inherently dealing with a market that has market barriers. Otherwise, you wouldn't be an impact company. And so, to be talking to venture capitalists that say that they're impact investors, but they're using the same metric is frustrating. I got frustrated by that. The second thing is that I was an impact company here in Austin, and Austin states that it is a haven for investors. And yet 5 years later, despite all of my best efforts, neither Austin Energy nor Austin Water has done a pilot, has attempted to do work with us. When you're trying to do impact work, government is a legitimate place to go. And that would seem to be that if it's going to be an incubator, there should be an opportunity for that. We are getting close to, hopefully, an opportunity for that to change, but it's, San Antonio was the one who took a risk on us, not Austin. So there was my attitude, which, had it not been impact, I might have been, had fewer expectations. There's the impact investors. There's the market barriers that are inherent to the whole thing. And as a result, I think if you are an impact company, you need to be prepared for a slog. And I will say that just in the past 2 months, since we've said, we're going to stop trying to raise capital and we're going to do it ourselves, the amount of mental energy that I was carrying associated with that process was significant. And putting that down just to focus on the business has been awesome. So I've been able to focus on sales. I've been able to work on staff. I've been able to, try to tackle things that, weren't really getting addressed. There's a tremendous drain that comes with it that you don't understand is really happening to you. And it has an impact on your business. So Kevin, did I answer the questions?
Yeah, I know, totally,
Okay.
totally. Especially, I really like your perspective of that about the. I see Emmanuel is on. I just was talking to him about yesterday about just the slog of dealing with investors and stuff like that, and just like being able to release it. And in my case, the two ventures that actually, I had two ventures that were investor funded and two ventures that were bootstrapped. I made more money on the bootstrap side, so
Yeah.
I kind of sing from the same hymnal.
And that was one of the things that the VC guy said recently. He's like, I think you can self-fund this, and why would you accept the dilution if you could do that? Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so Jetty asked in the chat a while ago, he said, quite a journey, much respect for the grit and perseverance here to make it here through 5 years. Was there a common reason, mantra, insight you kept returning to when you told people, critics, no?
And so I think it's twofold. The first is that I really believed in what the mission of the company was. I fundamentally don't see water and energy. I mean, they're different resources, but it's the same problems. And so it didn't seem necessary to me to have to make a choice. You know, what we're doing is valid, and the same workflows and business processes are legitimate, and there's really nobody in the space that spans both of those. And it was going to create some benefits for us, I think, to say we work in water, we work in energy. That means if you bring something new to us, you know, electrification, for example, the community choice aggregators in California are now rolling out a program for homeowners to order, you know, mini battery backups if they have medical equipment that needs electric power. And because of the wildfires and the power outages that happened last summer, they wanted people to be able to plug these things in, have them charged up, and if the power goes out, you can put your dialysis machine in there, or you can put your ventilator in there, or whatever it is that you need. That's not energy efficiency. It's not water conservation. It's the same kind of a program. It's just a different product. And for them to push electrification on people because it's, you know, renewable electricity, they have to help people manage resilience. So, you know, now we're a resilience program offerer as well. So,
Excellent.
you know, so it was the mission. It was seeing things without that domain lens. Like it's not about energy, it's not about water, it's about customer programs, it's about where the utility industry is going. And so like those were the things I think that just kept me going, like believing that this is the way that we needed to go. Another thing was about Salesforce. You know, why are you putting your platform on top of anybody else? Salesforce is a ticket to entry. I mean, if I can say that I've got a scalable, reliable, dependable system that isn't perfect, but it's better or just as good as anything out there. Utilities are a market that, you know, want to have that in their back pocket, and it's worth it. Two of our clients that one of our VC potential just interviewed said, you know, when I got Aiqueous' product, I wanted two things. I wanted Salesforce in the background, and I wanted their expertise in setting it up. So why would I drop one of those things? Anyway, so that's, you know.
Beautiful. Courtney just asked, what lessons can you share about breaking down barriers in long established industries that can simply choose to do nothing new? In other words, were you able to identify certain orgs that had an appetite for change and just latch onto them? Or is this an industry shift that you're tapping into or creating?
So the answer is yes to all of those things. So all of that is happening simultaneously. I mean, we definitely had to go to some of the early adopters, but the utility space in general is going through this transformation. It's one of the reasons I wanted to be here, is because I knew that it was happening, and there was a certain amount of like having to survive long enough to be able to start taking advantage of it. COVID has, you know, spurred a greater interest in virtual solutions than, you know, previously existed. That is generating more market activity than I think there used to be. I hate to say it, but the barriers, it's a matter of waiting it out. Like our water clients in particular, but it's, you know, anytime they, you know, we talk to them about the platform, they have to go to the utilities are going to have the technical buyer, the business buyer, and the procurement, the financial buyer. the technical buyer is the IT department every time. And every time the IT department says, you don't need that, we can do it. 2 years later, after nothing's happened, then, you know, they get the permission to go out. And we've tried everything, you know, providing technical information on Salesforce, customer testimonials. You know, we have a reseller called Carasoft that has state contracts all across the US. And so we're on the DIR for Texas. And none of that has mattered. I mean, none of that has mattered. It's always, you know, you have the initial conversations, you have to stay in touch, and you're like waiting for the kernels to pop in the microwave. And that's, you know, so you just have to make sure that you're doing enough of those in order for it to work out. Some move faster than others. And there's an industry shift, I think, that is gradually happening as enough people do. So you have those first few kernels pop, and then all of a sudden there's a ton of activity in the microwave. So that's what's going on.
That's beautiful. Do I have another question out there? I've got a question I can ask. David Potes, go ahead, right ahead.
Thank you, Jonathan. Congrats on your company and the presentation. Also a great background you have there. All justice.
Thank you.
I have a kind of a technical question. I kind of relate with you in the sense that I don't have a software background. So one of the options that I did studied was Salesforce, but I found out that it was kind of complicated to get into, be approved by Salesforce. So I mean, I didn't push forward, I stopped. So one of the questions is, I want to ask you, what has been your experience with Salesforce? And the other one is, did you see any other options with the local labs that, you know, develop software, something like that?
Sure. Great question. So my experience with Salesforce has been very inconsistent. I'll put it that way. So we did get through the security review process. And because we were 100% built on Salesforce, it was easier than if we were going to be building a product that kind of sat outside of it. You know, knowing now what I do, there's, you know, you can find reputable product development organizations, PDOs, who can help you get, not just develop the product, but also get through the security review process. I'm working with a firm called Extentia. They're based in Pune, India. They have a US-based rep, and so she's our point of contact, but they've been great to work with. There's another company, they are based in Czech, but they've got an office in Dallas. And so it's just a matter of, by reputation, finding a firm that can help you take what you're doing and figure out how to translate to Salesforce and create the package. The downside with Salesforce is that if you build a package and it becomes a managed package, it is locked down. And so when you deploy it, there are massive restrictions on what you can configure after it's deployed. So we've had to actually learn by doing, where we have made a change to the product, pushed it out, and then realized that we couldn't change it once we pushed it out to a client from that place. And we literally had to roll back not just what we did to the client, but to the whole package on Salesforce to work back to a place where we had that flexibility again. So there are reasons why Salesforce does that, because it's so big. But you need somebody's expertise on, like, everything that you want to do has to have like you have to take what Salesforce is going to do as a given, and then you have to figure out what your strategy is going to be, because you need to know ahead of time what you're going to want to change or configure. Another option is, I was at a success committee interview for Austin Technology Incubator for a company that's building on top of Zoho, which is another CRM product. They found an Israeli software developer to build on top of it. But I don't think that they created the intellectual property agreement that was necessary to be able to assign the intellectual property, what the developer had done, to the company. So in other words, there's going to be a gray area about who owns whatever it is that they've built. And I don't know that Zoho has a formal process where you can distinguish what is Zoho's intellectual property versus the company's intellectual property, right? Because I've got the managed package on Salesforce, I can claim that as belonging to the company. And so that distinction is better than what's on Zoho, because if all you've done is configured Zoho and then you spin up a bunch of new Zoho orgs, you may not really have anything. All you really have is, the experience you've got. The one thing I can say about Salesforce is that there is a group called partner account managers. They're the ones who help integrated sales vendor partners like us. The one that we have right now, his name is Banya, is awesome. But that's also inconsistent. It depends upon who you get. So Salesforce is this monstrosity that you have to learn how to manage. Even the account executives, they never touch our customers at all. And if I let them know I'm talking to somebody and they haven't been talking to them, they will swoop in and start trying to sell a whole bunch of stuff that's just not relevant to the client. So you have to be prepared to kind of beat them back a bit. So I don't know if that helps. We wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we've done without being on Salesforce. And so I think that it's a great platform and it provides scalability. We had an inbound communication from the United Kingdom from a water utility, and I can rely upon an account executive out in the United Kingdom for Salesforce to follow up with them in a way that I can't do. But Zoho and there are some other options out there, but they're less mature, and you have to do a better job at protecting your intellectual property if you build on something else.
Oh, that's
Does that
great.
answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. And actually, I didn't know about this type of firms that actually help you with Salesforce. So that was one of my issues, that Salesforce gives a lot of options, and I don't know which one would fit in, which one.
Yeah, so the one that we're working with out in India is like $34 to $40 an hour for consulting. And I would be happy to get you in touch with them. And they would be happy to speak with you if that's something that you'd want to consider.
I appreciate it. Yes, thank you.
Sure.
We've got time for one more question. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask before I hop in with one of mine? David Rodriguez, Alessio. I don't know, Jonathan, if you didn't know, we have Mexico represented, Austin, Texas represented, Nigeria represented, Italy represented, and then all over Texas as well.
That's cool.
So, John, this is your cue to get ready to do your elevator pitch. It'll be about a few more minutes. My last question would be, was there anything, since we were just talking about the software development house, and that was such a strategic part of what happened, are there any other thoughts that you would actually just say that, it's like, hey, I mean, it sounds like that was a real big impediment. Any other thoughts about, how you could have vetted earlier so that you had less pain?
So it's tricky. Had I had a technical co-founder who was really passionate about the technology, and we had a shared vision, this could have gone faster and earlier. In terms of the product development organizations, I relied upon my network, even the network of my board. Nobody was really that effective at helping me out. I did speak to other organizations in town who pointed me in the direction of another group that turned out to be a dumpster fire. And I had no idea that was what was going to happen. But my experience was not alone in that regard. And this seems to be an organization that cycles through people who then figure out what's going on and they move on to the next. So I don't know if it would have been possible for me to have figured that out unless I had, really thoroughly vetted references. So, I think I underestimated the importance of the discipline side of a software organization. And but we thought we were getting that, from the very beginning. There was a local company who specializes in helping startups get going on Salesforce. It's the scar tissue. I don't know, Kevin, if I could have been smarter about this and made better decisions. It's been luck until we got to a position where I could afford some people that I could actually trust to help find the right resource and, rely upon their expertise. So It's just the way.
And part of what I think, I mean, at different times in TechCrunch's history, we've done a little bit more of that vetting ourselves just because of my background. I grew up in the ranks of the software developers, but yeah, we haven't had that in, that's not been a feature that we've been really doing over the last few years. And I think that, like you're pointing out, it's like such a critical strategic issue that, you know, it's something that perhaps we should do.
Well, so in Salesforce specifically, and this speaks to David's point, I think, just very quickly, you know, they make it so accessible that anybody can get started up on it. But just because you get started up on Salesforce doesn't mean that you have the business discipline to run a company that helps people get started. And there's a huge difference between a certified Salesforce consultant and a really effective organization that's going to help you. And so I made the mistake of not knowing that. And now I do.
Yeah, there. One of the things I'll look for the material in the past. I would talk about the distinctions between the programmer, software developer, engineer, and architect, and those. There's a whole ontology we have on that. Well, let's do this. So one of the things that I do at the end of someone's. First off, Jonathan, thank you. What I'm going to do is go through, and I took some notes. I always take notes and try to write down some takeaways that I hear as you're going through things. I'll just run through this real quick, and then if I missed some part of it, just correct me as we're on the fly. I'll do it really quick. First off, Jonathan told us about his background, Venture 431. Yay! He talked about the whole idea of his business and utility support, like what he would, you know, how he chose the market and how he went there. He got to $1 million. It didn't fit the pro forma that he actually originally had set out in Venture Forth, but he did get to $1 million run rate. I'm so excited about that. You told us right after one of the things that was kind of hard is starting a water support business, that then you ended up going from a drought to, I think, did you say 3 days or 3 months? Yeah, you just muted yourself.
Sorry, it was 3 months later. 3 months later, Memorial Day floods in Austin. Yeah.
3 months later, the market evaporated when there's lots of rain in Austin, Texas. There's been lots of pivots. He talked about, you know, what his relationship with different pivots. And one of the things that I heard echo through this about not having the tech partner, the CTO, and this slowed him down a bunch. Pivot number one was pivoting into energy after the water market evaporated. He talked about like that during that time having to do just to stay afloat, taking on consulting opportunities. And then all of a sudden they had sudden growth and there was a lot of strain around that. The idea of the Salesforce having anyone can pick it up, he said, was both good and bad, because it kind of hid the discipline that he actually talked about that they had to build a process around. And he had to do a lot of customer education. And I think for especially for the people I can see face-wise, and then I know the people that will listen to this, in this impact innovation space, really having to teach the customer, it was echoed in what Courtney was saying in her question. Pivot number two, when they pivoted into having software discipline in the group, that was really understandable, you know. And I had the benefit from growing up in that space, but then I missed a lot of the business concepts that you learned on the other side. So figuring out how to round out the team earlier was an important thing. Lots happened. There was a couple of significant transitions from the team, and just recognizing that's a natural part of what happens in a company. Then partners defining people. That was interesting about using vets that are being introduced to veterans that are being introduced to Salesforce. I thought that was interesting about having that type of partnership. He said that he wasn't ready to scale the VCs, that it's not ready for him, for them, but then the land grab was on. But, you know, recognizing that the land grab's on right now and we can't use VCs to go do that because cash wasn't the driver. You know, if you're in this industry that you're having to bust into, cash is not necessarily the driver. And one of the things that, I mean, I've heard it in David Potus's question. I heard it yesterday in Emmanuel's questions that he sent me on WhatsApp, that, you know, there's just this frustration that a lot of times, and, you know, it's back to my own experience of like, I recognize and I did better with my bootstrapping than I did with my investor-backed stuff. Having to run the business different than the standard story was the thing that he said right after that, and that the possible exits would be to a private equity or another different kind of firm. And so stepping back from that, but he held true to his mission. He held a toe in the pool for the rebound industry of water, which is good, right? That's paying off for them really nicely now. The impact space and the frustration with investors and market barriers that recognize that just because you're doing impact, I mean, I have that sense of entitlement too. Every freaking day, everyone knows about it. I'm going to get a lot of smiles. Courtney's nodding her head. Yeah. So, and sometimes the 20th point, it's hard to get traction at home. There's this famous guy named Jesus that said the same thing. It's hard to get traction at home, right? And so it's it's interesting. But I really love this part about what he said, the mental energy that was released by dropping the investor path. And it sounds like that's just been really healthy. He didn't have to make a choice between water and energy. He's now doing the integration, and then this has opened up the general resilience model that's now going into electricity. And then one of the things that I heard through this, and especially for the all that are coping with the ups and downs of the impact space, was mission. He said, just kept on talking about stuff that was just mission, mission, mission. In this case, he said, the purpose of mission kept on going more than the domain lens of looking at just any one of those different issues. 24th thing was dealing with the tech buyer, the business buyer, and the financial buyer. And you sometimes have to just wait them out. He said, waiting for the kernels to pop, waiting for the popcorn to pop. He had to wait 2 years because IT was like, hey, we can do that. And then 2 years later, he finally was able to convince people. And just the intestinal fortitude about having to wait so long. 25th wing was product development reviews, product development organization, and how he finally got to the partner that's actually kicking ass for him. 26 was the concern about making sure that especially if you don't have a software background and you don't have control of your technology, to make sure that you secure the technology. In the United States, if you do not have a contract that transfers copyright, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've gotten burned by this. If you don't have a contract that transfers copyright, you can get burned. And it sounded like you told one of the stories. And then 27th point, final point that I wrote down, using the network for finding that software development organization, the technology partner, and making sure that if you don't have the discipline of this other area, like in this case, the technology or software development, making sure that you have some analog that allows you to have some protection there. Hey, this is quite a journey. Congratulations, Jonathan. We say frickin' kick ass. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming back as a senpai in this journey and sharing the story. And we hope to have you back some more because I saw a lot of nods going on about different people saying, yeah, I know as an example, two of our guys that are in Mexico, David Rodriguez and David Potes, a lot of the slogging that they've had to do. David Rodriguez is in the security space, physical security space. David Potes is working with hospitals and helping do patient relation management tools. And he's having to take both of them are having to take these existing industries and kind of crack them open. So hopefully that was helpful to y'all. Let me just switch gears. We have John, I actually don't know what year in school you are, but we have a young person who's got some time before he takes his full-time job in October. And I had not been able to get word out to y'all to say, hey, I've got this individual that would like to donate some time as an intern, or if you have an intern paid spot, he wants that too. But I said, hey, come on to the Venture Outfitter and share what you're looking for. Now, Jonathan has already called first dibs because he was on in the pre-section before that. But that being said, John, please go ahead and share your elevator pitch. You got a minute?
Absolutely. Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, my name's John. I'm a senior in computer engineering at the online school that UT Austin is now. So I'm graduating this semester, and I have a full-time job for my 2 internships in financial technology, but it starts in October. So that means I have 4 months to do whatever. And I'm looking for pretty much any kind of software development work. As long as you have an interesting company that's a fun team to work with, I'd definitely love to talk with you. So I'll put my email in the chat or connect with me on LinkedIn, whatever. And yes, if you could use a software developer for 4 months, and if you have something interesting that your company is doing, which I'm sure is true of all of you, I'd love to talk.
That sounds great. So that'll be in the chat. You'll go ahead and type that in right now. The chat will be open for just a little bit longer. For those of you all that are listening to this on Facebook Live, look for him on LinkedIn. I kept on losing his email back and forth. And so I'm like, John, just come join the Venture Outfitter and join us in this conversation. And John, you're welcome to actually be on these programs every week as you're, as part of your training process. Because we need more people driving startups. So, and obviously, one of the things that Jonathan's saying is that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So make sure that you actually know that that's part of what you should be looking at as you build a career. You can go to a big company and be a software developer, although also do that as well. Okay, so Gerald, by the way, is already posting in there. So I think we're creating a little bit of a feeding frenzy. But we'll let y'all work it out. That's y'all's problem, by the way. Just to make sure, after this moment, you got to contact John directly. Kevin's too dyslexic to be able to remember how to spell his last name, which already happened a couple of times, and trying to connect him in. So let's see, Kristen, do we have any announcements? I'm about to share the screen and talk about the next 2 events. But do we have any announcements that we need to talk through, Kristen?
I just have a request that I am doing a tech run. It kind of ties into what we are for our events for the upcoming week, but we are having our first ever virtual campfire. So I know we're already over time, but if a few people could stay behind so that I could just test out breakout rooms and get the tech behind it. We're a community of practice, and I would just really appreciate it. So if anyone has time to stick around for a few extra minutes, just stay on the line and bear with me as we do that. Thank you.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long. Next week, we'll be doing the Venture Outfitter. The program will be at 11 o'clock, or this time, this time slot next week. Will be an intellectual property attorney that's going to be talking about doing intellectual property work and legal work across borders. We will have Russian simultaneous translation for that. So if you know someone that might not, especially if some of you have friends in Russia, we'd like to expand the footprint about what's possible. The Eurasia Foundation funded that program. I was in Siberia during November of this last year. And so that program is, it's got special support for Russian entrepreneurs to take advantage of some of the TechCrunch tools. That's gonna be at 11 o'clock. And then at 6:30 Texas time, we're gonna do this virtual campfire in conjunction with the organization that Lindsay is a local leader of, and then it's based out of New York City, called
Actually,
Start
New York
Out.
City and San Francisco. So the great thing about this is it's going to be a national event, so you'll get to meet people from all over the big cities of the United States. So it'll be way outside of Texas. You know how those maps of Texas show the world as kind of little bits around the periphery? You get to meet the real people. So I think it's going to be very exciting.
There'll be Texas and not Texas people there. So Texas people there, like David Potes, you're not Texas. You don't have to be in the United States to participate. I think it'd be great. The thing we'd love to do is I'd love to see 200 people in that. And the details, it could even be more. Right now, I think we're going to bump our Zoom membership up to at least 200, and just so we can see what happens. I look forward to seeing what it feels like to have a campfire that large. So should be interesting. Okay, well, other than that, I think that what we want to do is switch gears into the experiment. If anyone can stick around, if there's no other question, if you're looking for this information, what we're going to do is we do our best to always have the events that are upcoming on the calendar there. In the coming weeks, I recognize that there's some needs that we need to go back to some of the basics. And so we're bringing some of the venture forth concepts back into this time. And I and several of the other instructors from venture forth will present our different areas. So that's going to be happening. Kristen and I are always looking for other people that you think, hey, we'd really like to hear from this person. And yeah, Jonathan, it looks like you're waving to take off. Thank you again,
Yeah, sorry.
by the way.
Got to get going. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I put my email in there. David, if you want to follow up and get some referrals to some of the organizations I was talking to, be happy to get those to you. And John, I'll get in touch with you soon. Anyway, thanks everybody.
Okay.
Kevin,
thanks
a lot.
Thanks
Kristen,
again.
you too.
Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you. All right, bye.